The sun slowly crept over the horizon, casting a golden glow across Lincoln Park. The morning air was crisp, the soft rustling of leaves blending harmoniously with the distant chirping of birds. Dew glistened on the neatly trimmed grass, and the park's walking paths sparkled under the first rays of sunlight. Seated comfortably on a weathered wooden bench was Mr. Elijah Brooks, a distinguished elderly black man in his late 70s. His hands, worn from years of hard work, gently cradled a steaming cup of coffee. The aroma mingled with the fresh scent of morning dew, creating a moment of pure tranquility. Beside him lay a wooden cane, its curved handle polished smooth from decades of use. Elijah's silver-streaked hair caught the sunlight, a crown of resilience atop a life filled with both struggle and triumph. Dressed in a pressed plaid shirt, tan slacks, and a soft wool jacket to fight off the morning chill, there was an undeniable dignity in his posture. Every wrinkle etched into his face seemed to tell a story, a life steeped in history. He unfolded a local newspaper, its pages fluttering in the breeze. Reading the morning paper in this very park had been his ritual for over 30 years. It was a simple pleasure, a grounding moment where he could reflect, breathe, and enjoy the peace he'd spent a lifetime fighting for. But peace, as it often is, was fleeting. Hidden behind a flowering magnolia tree a few benches away sat another figure, silent, observant. To most, he seemed like just another park-goer enjoying the fresh morning air. But there was an intensity to his stillness, a laser focus in the way his eyes never left Elijah. He was a witness, though his reasons for watching were unclear. The park slowly stirred to life. Joggers passed by in rhythmic strides, dogs tugged at their leashes, and parents pushed strollers while sipping lattes. Elijah offered friendly nods to the familiar faces, his warm smile a fixture in the community. Lincoln Park wasn't just a place to him. It was part of his story. It was nearly 9 a.m. when that calm morning shattered. A patrol car pulled up near the park entrance. The door swung open, and out stepped Officer Ryan Cooper, a young white policeman with sharp features and an air of authority. His uniform was immaculate, the badge on his chest catching the sun as he walked with brisk determination. His eyes scanned the park, settling on Elijah with a furrow of suspicion. Elijah looked up from his paper, immediately sensing the shift in energy. Officer Cooper approached, one hand casually resting on his utility belt. "Morning, sir," the officer said, though his tone lacked warmth. "What brings you here today?" Elijah raised an eyebrow, folding his newspaper with care. "Just enjoying my coffee and reading the news. Been doing this every morning for years." Officer Cooper's eyes narrowed. "This is a residential area. You live nearby?" Elijah nodded. 3 blocks down on Hawthorne Avenue. Been there since '82. But Cooper didn't seem convinced. "Funny, I don't recall seeing you around before. You got any ID on you?" Elijah felt a familiar knot tighten in his chest, an old ache that had nothing to do with his heart condition. He inhaled deeply, trying to keep his voice calm. "I didn't think I need to bring proof to sit on a park bench." Officer Cooper's jaw tightened. "I'm asking for identification, sir. If you can't provide it, I'll have to ask you to leave." Elijah gripped the handle of his cane. "Young man, I've been part of this community longer than you've been alive. I helped plant half the trees you see in this park." Cooper scoffed. "Yeah? And I'm the mayor. Last warning, old man. Get up and go home." The tension in the air thickened as Cooper took a step closer, his hand brushing against the handcuffs on his belt. Elijah's hand trembled slightly, whether from age or frustration, he wasn't sure. "Officer," Elijah said, voice steady, "I'd like to speak to your supervisor." Cooper's face flushed with anger. "That's it." He reached out, grabbing Elijah's arm roughly. "You're under arrest for trespassing." The force of the grip made Elijah stumble, his cane clattering to the pavement. Pain shot through his shoulder as he gasped, struggling to keep his balance. "Please," he wheezed, "I have a heart condition." But Officer Cooper was already pulling out his handcuffs. "Stop!" The command echoed across the park, sharp and authoritative. Both Elijah and Officer Cooper froze. A tall figure strode forward from the shadows, his dark overcoat flapping slightly in the morning breeze. Chief Marcus Reynolds, a black man in his late 50s with silver-threaded hair and a stern expression, approached with measured steps. The badge on his chest was unmistakable. "Let go of him, Officer Cooper," Chief Reynolds ordered. The young officer hesitated for a beat before releasing Elijah's arm, taking an uneasy step back. The older man staggered, but was quickly steadied by the chief. "Mr. Brooks, are you all right?" Chief Reynolds asked, his voice softening. "I'll live," Elijah replied, though his breath was still shallow. Reynolds turned to Cooper, his face hardening. "Explain yourself. Why are you detaining Mr. Brooks?" Cooper's bravado faltered under the chief's icy stare. He didn't have ID. I thought he was loitering." "Loitering?" The chief's voice was razor-sharp. "Mr. Elijah Brooks is a respected member of this community. He helped design this park, and you're harassing him for sitting on a bench." Cooper paled, the weight of his mistake settling heavily on his shoulders. I didn't know. You should have. And you just compounded your ignorance with aggression." The young officer swallowed hard, shame creeping into his features. Reynolds turned back to Elijah. "Come on, Mr. Brooks. Let's get you seated again." As Elijah sat back down on the bench, Chief Reynolds bent down to retrieve his cane. The silent observer from earlier now stood nearby, having moved in closer during the altercation. The chief's eyes flicked toward him briefly before returning to Cooper. "You're dismissed, Officer Cooper. We'll talk about this back at the station." The young officer muttered a stiff, "Yes, sir," before hurrying off, his footsteps heavy with regret. Chief Reynolds sat next to Elijah, shaking his head. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's not the first time," Elijah sighed. "But I was hoping it would be the last." Reynolds looked down, guilt visible in the lines of his face. "We're working on it, but clearly we're not there yet." They sat in silence for a moment before Elijah spoke again. "You were here the whole time, weren't you? Watching?" The chief smiled faintly. "I like to see how my officers handle themselves. Looks like today was eye-opening." Elijah chuckled softly despite the lingering ache in his chest. "You can say that again." But this moment was more than just a confrontation gone wrong. It became a spark, igniting conversations throughout the community about accountability, systemic bias, and the responsibility of law enforcement. Elijah, despite his years, found himself once again at the center of a movement. And this time, the community was ready to listen.